For 3,000 years, one story has echoed through the halls of history. A tale of love, betrayal, and a war that toppled a legendary city. We all know the name, the Trojan War. We know the heroes, Achilles, Hector, Odysseus. And we know the trick, a giant wooden horse, a gift that became a city's doom. But what if I told you that the story we all know, the one sung by poets and immortalized by Hollywood, is only half the truth? What if the real Trojan War was far more complex, more brutal, and its origins far less romantic than the abduction of a beautiful queen? To find the real Troy, we must peel back layers of myth and legend, digging deep into the soil of modern-day Turkey. Here, at a site called Hisarlik, archaeologists have uncovered not one but 9 cities, built one on top of the other over thousands of years. For a long time, scholars debated if any of these could be the fabled city of Priam. But then, in the late 19th century, a controversial archaeologist named Heinrich Schliemann, armed with Homer's Iliad as his guide, began to excavate. His methods were crude, even destructive, but he unearthed golden treasures and massive walls that fired the world's imagination. Was this Troy? Evidence now points to the city layer known as Troy 7a. This city shows clear signs of a violent end, dating to around 1200 BCE, the very time the Trojan War is said to have occurred. We see evidence of fire, of skeletons left unburied in the streets, and arrowheads lodged in the walls. This wasn't just a city that fell into decline. It was a city that was sacked, burned, and destroyed. But who were the attackers, and why? Was it really 1,000 ships launched by Helen's face? The answer likely lies not in poetry, but in politics and economics. The Troy of the late Bronze Age was a powerhouse. It sat at a strategic choke point, the Dardanelles Strait, controlling the vital trade routes between the Aegean and the Black Sea. Any ship wanting to pass through would have had to pay tribute to Troy. This made the city fabulously wealthy, but also incredibly powerful, and a major thorn in the side of the rising powers in Greece, the Mycenaeans. These Mycenaeans were a formidable, warlike civilization. Their kings were buried with golden death masks and bronze weapons. They were expanding, colonizing, and raiding across the Aegean. Cuneiform tablets from the rival Hittite Empire, a superpower of the day, speak of a troublesome kingdom they called Ahiyawa. Many scholars now believe Ahiyawa is the Hittite name for the Achaeans, the very name Homer uses for the Greeks. These tablets describe diplomatic incidents, trade disputes, and even military conflicts over a city the Hittites called Wilusa, a name that sounds strikingly similar to Ilios, the other name for Troy in the Iliad. So the stage was set. On one side, you have the Mycenaean Greeks, an ambitious and aggressive confederation of kingdoms looking to expand their influence and secure profitable trade routes. On the other, you have Troy, a rich and strategically vital city-state controlling access to the Black Sea. This wasn't a war over a woman. It was a geopolitical clash of empires. It was a raid for profit, a struggle for control, a brutal power play. Helen may have been a convenient pretext, a rallying cry for the poets to sing about, but the real prize was the city itself. And what about the Trojan horse? It's one of the most famous symbols in history, but there is zero archaeological evidence for a giant wooden horse. So, where did the idea come from? Historians have some fascinating theories. The most popular one is that the horse was actually a metaphor for an earthquake. The god of earthquakes, Poseidon, was also the god of horses. Perhaps a powerful earthquake breached Troy's famous unbreakable walls, allowing the Greeks to storm the city. Another theory is that the horse was a type of siege engine, a large wooden tower covered in wet horse hides to protect it from flaming arrows, which the Greeks used to scale the walls. This would have looked like a strange, monstrous beast to the defenders. The story of it being a gift could have been a poetic flourish added later to explain a brilliant but far less magical military tactic. The war's aftermath was just as devastating as the war itself. The victorious Mycenaean kingdoms didn't enjoy their triumph for long. Shortly after the traditional date of the Trojan War, Their own civilization collapsed. Their palaces were burned, their writing system was lost, and Greece plunged into a dark age that lasted for centuries. It's a bitter irony. In destroying Troy, they may have sown the seeds of their own destruction, perhaps by overstretching their resources or creating a power vacuum that invited other invaders. When the dust settled and the Dark Age ended, all that remained were the ruins of these once great cities and the fragmented memories of a heroic age. These memories were kept alive by oral poets, bards who traveled from town to town, singing tales of gods and heroes. Over hundreds of years, the story of a trade war was embellished. Kings became demigods, skirmishes became epic duels, and a clever siege tactic became a legendary wooden horse. A poet we know as Homer eventually compiled these oral traditions into the epic masterpieces, the Iliad and the Odyssey. He wasn't writing a history textbook, he was creating art, forging a national identity for the Greeks from the ashes of a forgotten conflict. So the Trojan War wasn't just a myth, it was a real event, a pivotal moment that marked the violent, chaotic end of the Bronze Age. The story we know is a beautiful tapestry woven from threads of truth, legend, and poetic genius. It reminds us that behind every myth, there is often a kernel of history, and that the greatest stories are not always about gods and monsters, but about the very human struggles for power, wealth, and survival. The real Trojan War may be less romantic than the myth, but it is a far more powerful and resonant story of how empires rise, clash, and fall. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey into the past. If you enjoyed uncovering the real story behind the legend, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next historical deep dive. See you next time.